It is Wednesday, January 11th, 2023, and I call the Committee on Parks, Enterprise Services, and Culture and the Arts meeting to order. I'd like to welcome Committee Vice Chair Okimoto, Councilmember Cordero, and Councilmember Tupola. Pursuant to Act 220, Session Laws of Hawaii 2021, this meeting will be conducted as a remote meeting by interactive conference technology with the following procedures in effect for the meeting. Members of the public will be allowed to provide oral testimony remotely or in person in the council chamber on all items on the agenda. When each item is taken up, all persons who registered to testify in person will be called upon first, followed by those registered to testify remotely. Persons who have not registered will be given an opportunity to speak following the registered testifiers. Before testifying, each person shall state their name and will be limited to a 1-minute presentation on each item. So friendly reminder and tips, please video conference from a quiet location if possible. If you are watching the proceedings on Olelo, please mute your device at the time you are called to testify. When the timer on the screen reaches 0, please conclude your remarks promptly. Act 220 requires that all votes at remote meetings be conducted by roll call unless unanimous, and therefore I will first call for objections, and if there are any, then I will call for a roll call vote. Written testimonies include the testifier's address, email address, and phone numbers will be available to the public as described on the posted agenda. As a courtesy, please turn off all cell phones for the duration of the meeting. Thank you. Moving to agenda number 1. This bill, Bill 52, 2022, this bill will prevent bullying of youth in city programs and on city property. It will prevent retaliation against persons who report or participate in an investigation into a suspected incident and will establish city policies and procedures for handling these incidents. Members, please note that we distribute a hand-carried proposed CD1, which makes the following amendments. A, updates the bill to reflect the bill is amending and revised ordinance of Honolulu 2021 instead of the revised ordinance Honolulu 1990. B, makes miscellaneous technical and non-substantive amendments. Is the managing director here? He is? Okay. I'd like to introduce Managing Director Formby. He has to attend the meeting, so he asked if he could speak. So, Managing Director Mike Formby.
Thank you, Committee Chair Toba, Vice Chair Okimoto, and committee members. Mike Formby, Managing Director. Committee Chair Toba, I want to thank you, especially thank Council, but thank Committee Chair Toba for introducing Bill 52. I think you know back when we first discussed this, it aligned perfectly with you and your daughter, Mahealani, with her work on her nonprofit Brave to stop bullying. And I know she's also published a book about being respectful of people that are different. Mm-hmm. And that's what this policy is really all about. It's about creating a policy for youth programs on city property and in city programs. And it's to stop the bullying that sometimes leads to the unfortunate consequence of suicide. So I'm really proud of the fact that we're moving this policy, and I'm here to answer any questions, but I want to thank the Council and Committee Chair Toba for this bill. It's a very good bill, thank you. And I have reviewed CD1, I understand that those are minor changes and okay with that, thank you.
Thank you, Managing Director. Thank you. Any questions? Thank you, sir, appreciate it. Before we continue on with the agenda, I will take oral public testimony. Clerks, do we have in-person registered testifiers on this item with the bouquet of flowers? Okay. Please, when I call your name to the podium, press the on and off button. I think you know how to do this already.
Yep,
And
yep.
State your name and the agenda.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and and the Parks Committee. My name is Zhizi Xiong, or Angela Melody Young, and I'm testifying in strong support on behalf of my grassroots cares. As the mayor's administration testified today and on October 19th during the Public Safety Committee meeting about how bullying can lead to suicide, it proves that the matter is a public health concern, and that is also what the CDC says. We often think that this could be an exaggeration, or perhaps those statistics are over-magnifying a situation, and it is not an exaggeration. I stand here before you today to tell you about a very personal testimony about my cousin Byron. He was aggressively bullied in school to the point where he could not walk into a public bathroom anymore and had to change schools. He continued to get ostracized, ridiculed, and humiliated all throughout high school, and then after school in the workplace. In 2018, when we were 28, he took his own life. There were other factors contributing to this tragedy. There weren't mental health resources provided. There were socioeconomic factors that played into this tragedy, but bullying played the biggest part because it was a repeated pattern all throughout his life. He was also gay and transgender. Oftentimes, LGBTQIAs are bullied the most. To be able to tell you this testimony of bullying and the insidious nature of how it is connected to suicide is to be able to provide a witness report to the council of what happens when there are no policies about bullying in place. There are indeed ways to write laws to constitute the morality of how people should relate. There are some who say we cannot legislate morality, but with segregation, they did legislate that, and it was legislated that we cannot discriminate based on race or disability. So therefore, if you make it into a law and you set the rules, people will have to follow. Bullying and suicide, as public health concerns declared by the CDC, needs policies that shift from blame and punishment to prevention, education, and training with mental health awareness and a criminal justice intervention approach, yet with a justice and action-oriented approach. Then these policies can constitute evidence-based research to be implemented by law. When bullying and suicide become a public health concern, it is the due diligence of policymakers to implement prevention and training strategies by law. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Clerk, is there anyone else?
One last thing, Chair. I have a proposal as an amendment. I don't know if I probably can't.
Yeah, you can email me at my office. And
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Is there any other in-person testimony?
Chair, there are none.
Do we have any remote registered testifiers?
Chair, we have none.
Okay. Do we have anyone else standing by?
Chair, we have none.
Okay. Members, we are in discussion. Councilmember Tupola.
Thanks, Chair. Just a suggestion, maybe, we're on second reading today, or is this third reading?
Second, not yet. It's going to go
So
third.
we have some time.
Yeah.
So my suggestion would be to transmit it to the Office of Youth Services. So under DHS, the Office of Youth Services was created in 1989 to help juveniles. There's also a state youth commission. We have a Honolulu Youth Commission, and we have a Juvenile Justice Commission. So I think for those ones, it would be good for us to transmit it so that they know what laws are moving around in regards to the youth they serve. Underneath Office of Youth Services, they also do house the youth correction facility. But I'm looking forward to working with yourself and possibly hosting a youth town hall this year and trying to bring up issues like this. So this would be good for our Honolulu Youth Commission to know, and perhaps would even stimulate a good discussion at the town hall for youth to know that these are the advocacy avenues where they can go to, voice their concerns about their peers and a better way forward for the youth of Hawaii. So
Absolutely.
if you guys are in favor of it, I would like to see that in maybe in a CD2 in regards to the transmittal to these agencies, just to make it formal and maybe even increase our communication with these important youth commissions. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Councilmember. Members? So what I have to do? Okay, the chair recommends that Bill 52, 2022 be amended to a hand-carried proposed CD1 with the OCS number 2023-012-1-10-1023. Any objections? Any reservations? Hearing none, the bill is amended to a CD1. Thank you. Okay, moving on to agenda item, sorry. Oh, the chair then recommends that Bill 52, 2022, CD1 be reported out for passage on third reading. Any objections? Any reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Okay, thank you. Agenda item number 2. Resolution 22-290, this resolution encouraged the city administration to work cooperatively with community stakeholders to relocate city-owned surf racks in Waikiki and to explore whether the formation of public and private partnership with approximate landowners or hotels would enhance the operation and maintenance of the racks. Before we continue on the agenda, I will take oral public testimony. Clerks, do we have any in-person registered testifiers on this item?
Chair, we have none.
If there is none, seeing none, we will proceed to remote testimony. Clerks, do we have any remote registered testimony?
Chair, we have none.
Okay. Okay. We have from the administration, Jerry Populo, Director of Department of Enterprise Services.
Aloha, good afternoon. I think it's not too late to also say Happy New Year. Look forward to meeting Vice Chair Okimoto. I think we have an appointment lined up just to meet and greet and get a chance to get acquainted. So look forward to that. Just want to say thank you, Chair Tobo, Vice Chair Okimoto, Jerry Papillo, Department of Enterprise Services. Happy to answer any questions. Obviously, something along these lines, we're most definitely interested in working cooperatively with community stakeholders. I think there's some key items that we'd love to bring people together and work through, which is acceptable location that's suitable to all those stakeholders that we mentioned, and just putting the appropriate budgets and what kind of partnerships we might be able to iron out with those community stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, we are in discussion. Director, I do have questions. Does the administration plan to implement the project funded in the city budget as referenced in the resolution?
Well, there are some dollars that have been allocated, but depending on where and what the overall project looks like, we'd have to determine if that's sufficient funding or not. But again, certainly happy to take a look at what everyone has in mind on what and where it can come to fruition.
Okay, thank you. Anyone has questions for the director? Okay. The chair recommends that resolution 22-290 be reported out for adoption. Any objections? Any reservations? Hearing none, so ordered.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 3, presentation by the Department of Parks and Recreation on the status of ARPA and FRF funding projects and improvements being conducted through the department. Members, you should have a copy of the presentation on your desk. It is also available online as Departmental Communication D25. Before we continue on, I will take public testimonies. Clerk, do we have any in-person registered testifiers on this item?
Chair, we have none.
Okay, seeing none. Clerks, do we have any remote registered testifiers on this item?
Chair, we have none.
Okay, thank you. Being that, call up Director Laura Thielen, Department of Parks and Rec.
Thank you, council members. Laura Thielen on behalf of the City Department of Parks and Recreation, Chair Toba, Vice Chair Okimoto, and members of the committee. The park department staff is going to be making a presentation today on 5 primary ARPA projects that are being run through our department, and then some other additional council ad projects that are being run through the Department of Parks and Recreation. The 5 primary projects include 3 council ads from a prior year budget, and so we knew that you folks would be very interested in them, as the public as well. So Council Chair, Parks Committee Chair Tolba and I discussed this. What we wanted to do today is to come in and give you a broad overview of all 5 projects. And then each month in the Parks Committee, we'll be doing a more in-depth presentation of 2 projects, and one third month, 1 project. So each month, you'll hear some of the specific projects, and every project will be up in front of you every 3rd month. So you can see the progress, you can ask questions, you can make recommendations, as we go forward, and we can help incorporate your thinking into the final work product. So I'm very proud to have with me today a wide variety of people within the Parks Department who are running these projects, including some of their supervisors who are here to support them behind me. But I'm going to have Jennifer Barra, who is our Parks Department planner, to do the emceeing for the presentation, and then I'll be here to answer any additional questions that you may have about the budget, the procurement, and the things like that. So with that, invite Jen up. Just in case anybody's watching, we're going through some technical issues and just getting the screen up for the PowerPoint. This needs to come with instructions. There you go.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Barra, and I'm a planner with the department. Today, we will be going over our ARPA-funded projects. As you can see from this slide, we have 8 from our first tranche of administration projects. There are 8 projects totaling a little over $8 million. And today, we'll have a more in-depth discussion about the top 5, and then I'll come back and talk about the remaining 3, as well as the second tranche of FRF-funded projects and some operating fund projects that we have. So the first project, Let's Meet at the Park, I'm going to turn it over to Peter Yamashita.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and Council members. My name is Peter Yamashita, and I'm the manager at MSS, which is the Maintenance Support Services, and we're the maintenance and support for all the parks on all the islands, on this island. Back in the mid-1920s, when Mayor Caldwell relaxed the stay-at-home order, he gradually started lifting restrictions and he started opening city parks. People were so frustrated that they wanted to get out. So where did they go? Not to Augie's house, but they went to our city parks. They wanted to get outdoors, to run, to hike, to play sports, walk, just to get out and be outside again. So it's great to see our parks being utilized in this way, but with all these activities. But in parks, you need places to sit, to eat, just to relax. So our parks do have many tables and benches, but we need more. And so this is why my project, Let's Meet at the Park, is targeted to install 347 benches and 299 picnic tables in 62 of our larger city parks. These parks are also in CBDG communities. So these are some pictures with parks that don't have benches in it. And then we have parks that you see that do have benches and that people are using them. And then we have a list of our CDBG communities that will be installing the tables and benches in. So 347 benches and 299 picnic tables and actually 61 parks and 1 botanical garden. It's quite a large project to do. So I've divided this project into 3 contracts. Okay, each contract will install about 115 benches and about 100 tables. The first contract to install the tables and benches will be in Parks District 1, which encompasses parks in East Honolulu, and Parks District 4, which is God's country, the windward side. So we will install 18 benches also in Foster Botanical Gardens. The first solicitation for this project will be done next month in February. At that time, we will know and identify the installer, and so the tables and benches for this first contract will be ordered in March. I expect to commence the installation this summer, 2023, and we should finish in 3 months. After that, the first install will do the second and third solicitations. That will conclude the $2 million project. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Katie Kazin. I'm the Adopt a Park Project Manager.
Hi, I'm Anna Mines, the Community Gardens Project Manager.
Our project is revitalizing community gardens and other volunteer park activities. Our project description is to build departmental capacity to support community gardens and other volunteer activities to activate parks in an efficient, equitable, and user-friendly manner. We're finding there's a huge interest in volunteerism with DPR, but the pathways for individuals and organizations to partner with us are not always efficient, equitable, or user-friendly. So why do we need volunteers? Volunteerism meets unmet needs in the community and provides a direct line to those that are able to address those unmet needs. Volunteers strengthen the community and allow us to build strong bonds within our communities and encourages active community engagement.
So here on this slide, you see the spectrum of community engagement. It's important to note that community engagement or volunteering is really just one part of that, and community engagement is a spectrum ranging from informing to consulting, involving, to collaboration and empowerment. And to be successful, engagement plans really must be grounded in and sensitive to the context specific to the community that we're serving, which tells us which style or styles of, along the spectrum of community engagement should occur. And in our case, volunteering is really just one pathway, one slice of the spectrum, yet very important, as Katie mentioned, for building relationships, building resiliency, and encouraging civic engagement. So although we are restricted programs, she's Adopt a Park and I'm Community Gardens, we are still very much up here presenting together, working together for this larger effort of our roles in tackling community engagement for our department, and also volunteering and land stewardship. And at the heart of the work of our positions are these, can you go back one slide, sorry. Yeah, the highlighted in green are the 3 pieces of this work that we're really focusing on, which is Adopt a Park, one-time service cleanups, community recreational gardening program. But again, supporting the work of our department's larger goals towards community engagement. Next slide. So on the left here, you see pictures of surveys. This is just an example of what we're doing to meet these goals. We surveyed internally at Department of Parks and Recreation employees to gauge their awareness, understanding, and dedication to community engagement. And we're also working on an island-wide survey to get feedback on our volunteer programs and volunteer-based programs, yeah. And on the left on our right is a screen grab from a website concept, just a conceptual outline draft, because this year we'll be initiating a migration to a new platform with the goal of improving our user-friendliness and just better communication on our volunteer programs.
So as we analyze the information we're gathering to better develop our volunteer programs, we're finding that the need for creating pathways for our citizens to contribute to their communities is great. By creating more pathways for individuals and organizations to partner with DPR on volunteer projects, we will build relationships with community, activate parklands, and foster community pride and sense of belonging. Some of these pathways already exist and just need improving upon, for example, the Adopt a Park program, and some are in the early stages of being created. For example, we're working on what the agreements and processes would look like for a planting in parks program and an Adopt Undeveloped Lands program. The department receives a lot of requests through the Adopt a Park and community service programs to do plantings of natives or clean up areas that may not be on a developed park. This often falls outside of what the current scope of the Adopt a Park program is able to handle. So finding a way to say yes to these alternative projects is what we're working towards. We also plan to develop a better way to track and report on the significant work that our volunteers are doing in the community. So we've been researching better ways to do that, along with also developing a volunteer recognition program. As we look to increase our volunteer numbers, the needs to have processes, adequate staffing, and the training to handle such large volunteer base is going to increase. To aid in awareness of our program and to help meet metrics, we're also working on branding the DPR volunteer-based community engagement programs. And we are in the early stages of this, but we're working on using the idea of La Lima, or many hands working together, because at the core of this program, it's really about collective action towards community resiliency and land stewardship.
A lot of requests for planting opportunities are actually from those who want a community garden plot. The community garden program has 11 community gardens on Oahu, totaling over 1,200 plots, and I'm sure many of you are aware, very long wait lists. We'll be well, in my role specifically in this program is to update the vision and scope to meet the needs of the program's current members and to address the growing demand for community gardens on Oahu. And I summed it up here into 4 areas. The first is revising current and developing new program materials, which includes FAQs, flowcharts to provide clarity on application and revocation procedures, gardening guidelines, the handbook, and as mentioned, making our website more user-friendly. We will be working with local and national networks to build place-based resources on things like planting guidelines, mulching, and water conservation, just to give an example. The second here is collect and integrate feedback on the city's community garden rules and regulations. Our rules haven't been updated since 1984, and many folks past and present in the program have provided feedback, so we really have to integrate that. It's time. We'll also continue the information gathering and then work with our legal team to get that finalized within the next 2 years. And overall, we will be applying an equity lens to extend program offerings. The program materials I mentioned, making them available in all relevant languages is key. Providing place-based and culturally relevant resources is really key. We'll also be identifying who in the community garden program is represented, who the program is serving, who is not yet represented, and we'll do this through a survey to the community garden membership. And finally, going beyond what we currently offer, we'll be thinking about how to expand the community garden program, identifying where to prioritize in an equitable way. That's it for us. Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, Council members for allowing me to speak here today. My name is Lena Diamond. I'm the Park Ranger Manager, and I'm going to be talking about our Park Ranger Assessment Project today. So to provide a snapshot, we have a 2-year project staffed by myself and 4 other rangers, and we're looking to take an island-wide approach to unauthorized commercial activities in the city parks. So to expand on our focus of unauthorized commercial activities, first off, what is a commercial activity? So for those of you who may not know, according to ROH 10-1.1, the short definition that I can provide is a use or purpose designed for profit. So what makes a commercial activity unauthorized? Essentially, it's anything that is unpermitted by our office, or if it is a permitted activity, commercial operators are using our parks for those activities without a permit. Some examples of these, and you can see from 2 of the pictures I've provided, rental services, so anything from kayak rentals, stand-up paddleboard rentals, any kind of rentals. We also have an issue with glamping or camper vans. And so for those who are unfamiliar with the term glamping, this is the combination of glamorous camping. So this is kind of like a luxurious version of the traditional camping. In addition to this, we also have for-profit classes as well as food trucks and vendors. So for some people, you may be wondering why unauthorized commercial activities. So this happens to be the most common complaint that we receive at the permit office from both the public and city council. And this is quite evidence based on the commercial activity bills that we've been seeing in the recent years. So our parks are such a valuable asset to us and our communities. So when issues like this get out of hand, we can see how it infringes on the public's recreational use, how overuse and misuse can greatly degrade the quality of our parks, and at the end of the day, can be in violation of our city rules and regulations. So I just want to summarize our project, or our main objectives of this project. So here we have 6 points. This is probably going to be the most important facet of this project, which is gathering data and identifying hotspots. So this is going to allow us to have a more solidified outlook on the types of unauthorized commercial activities we're seeing, the volume of these activities, what parks they're happening in the most, as well as being able to identify trends. And so this will be really helpful for us to refer back to once we start trying to make changes to address these issues better. We're also actively working to not only strengthen our partnership with HPD, but also to expand our partnerships with other agencies in order to encourage compliance through education. So with HPD, they're currently our enforcement arm, as some of you may know. So strengthening our relationship, our partnership with them allows us to have a more stable line of communication. With other agencies, it's becoming abundantly clear to us that unauthorized commercial activities are a very intersectional issue amongst all of us. So being able to have interagency communication allows us to, better benefit how we can address all of these, as well as allow us to discuss jurisdictional issues. I know that's something that comes up pretty frequently as well. Additionally, we intend to research enforcement systems and processes used by other departments, and this is going to be other city and state agencies as well as other parks departments in other states. And lastly, I'm going to put our last 2 points together because they kind of go hand in hand. But at the end of these 2 years, we're going to be reporting back on our project outcomes and findings, and we will propose recommendations relating to our next steps moving forward. So this is going to include anything from revising our rules, recommending any ordinance changes perhaps, as well as anything relating to staffing, equipment, as well as training and safety. So before I move on to our progress on this project so far, I think this is a really important discussion that we should have, or just at least kind of talk about a little bit, because there's a lot of considerations, planning, research that really goes into having an enforcement system of any sort. And so in thinking of enforcement systems or apparatuses and how that can apply to our current situations and condition, there's a variety of different factors to consider. So things like enforcement power, of course, we need to know, where is this going to come from? Obviously, city council is one option, as well as the chief of police. But to what extent is this being granted? Are we only doing civil things? Are we extending to criminal? And with that comes jurisdictional issues with HPD or other law enforcement agencies, as well as what kind of training is necessary to support these efforts. In addition to that, we need to consider what kind of system and process are we going to use to supplement this. As we know, due process is really important. So we need to be able to clearly define what our violations are, what kind of penalties are we going to impose for those, and where is this going to go? Is this going to go through the courts? Are we going to have a board? Things like that, as well as the general operational and professional standards, because we need to be able to have accountability, transparency, and things like that. While this list isn't exhaustive, these are kind of some of the main things to that we're going to be considering as we go through this towards our end goal of the recommendations and the final report. Because being able to set the foundation for enforcement and everything else that comes with it really needs this careful planning and consideration, which is why this project is really important. And we also need to think about like some of the flexibility that we need to exercise with this project, considering it's pretty new for us, especially given the breadth of the things that we're trying to get done. So finally, for our progress, for the items that we've completed so far, these include having my position filled with all the nitty-gritty of that, including familiarization with the park rules. That's really important for us. We've also completed our tracking and storage spreadsheets for our data collection, and we've conducted our preliminary field visits. And so these have particularly been to our parks that see a lot of our complaints or the majority of our complaints. So going into this quarter of this year, we are working on filling our 4 contract park ranger positions. So we're currently recruiting and interviewing right now. With regard to our data collection efforts, we are currently working on finalizing our survey. So we have a community survey and a park staff survey planned. The community survey is going to be broken up into 2 parts, so I'm just going to explain this really briefly. The first part is going to be general park user information, just to gauge like what parks they're going to, why are they going to the parks, things like that. And the second part is going to be related to unauthorized commercial activities. So we're going to ask them, you know, what are they seeing? What are their thoughts? And there's also an aspect that we want to include the operators themselves, because they are technically our community members as well. For our park staff survey, this is mostly seeing their perspective on similar questions, since they are the ones that are going to be in the that work in the parks every day. And our final piece is our, we're continuing to reach out to other agencies, both in terms of partnerships and general information regarding park rangers. So we've had these initial meetings with a variety of agencies so far. These include HPD, DLNR, DES, and DOTAX. So these discussions are going to remain ongoing as this project continues to progress. With regard to the park ranger specific discussions, we've been talking a lot to Kauai's park enforcement as well as Maui's park security. Yes, so that'll be all for me. Thank you.
Also want to welcome Council Chair Tommy Waters.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and Council members. I'm Sharon Tomita. I am with the Department of Parks and Recreation as a program specialist, recreation program specialist.
Okay, aloha Chair Tauba, Vice Chair Okimoto, and members of the committee. I'm Kehaupu, Deputy Director for Parks and Recreation. Sharon and I are gonna speak briefly on our Youth Development Services project. So this project it's actually composed of five projects, and with the intent of building a stronger and more equitable Hawaii by investing in youth development. DPR serves thousands of children and youth annually through our year-round recreation programs, services, and events, with Summer Fun being our most notable, I believe, since 1948. I want to mention also that during the pandemic, DPR was one of very, very few organizations that continued to serve youth in our programs, face-to-face, in person. So we were able to continue to provide a safe environment for students to socialize, continue to learn, and provide a much-needed service to Ohana, which demonstrates that our ability to be adaptive and flexible and continue to grow. So with this project, we are addressing, we want to, again, invest in youth development through 5 projects that address program support, design and development, evaluation, and capacity building. So the first project is summer fun support for Ohana and youth. And so this is what we're doing is providing immediate relief to families who are impacted by COVID. And we're doing this through providing allotments for students, summer fund participants in Title I and qualified census tract communities. So we have a registration fee for our programs and then also program fees. And the program fees are charged to families and they cover bus transportation, field trips, admission fees. And so with our FRF funding, last year we were able to waive those fees for students attending programs in these communities. We provided a $70 allotment per participant, and we were also able to provide free snacks at one of our sites, a qualified census tract site. For this year, for summer 2023, we will again waive summer fund fees, and we are increasing the allotment to $100 per student. And we are also, so we're in the process of federalizing contracts, doing the things that we need to do in order to use federal funding. And then we are also planning our snack program so that we can provide free snacks to all of our students in both Title I and QCT programs this summer. Oh, yes, thank you, Sharon. And we are also providing an allotment for our junior leaders. And last year we had over 800 junior leaders participating, supporting, and volunteering in our programs. So our second project is, we're calling it Program Design and Development. And so what we're doing is, we want to continue to evolve and grow. So we are building the capacity of our staff to utilize an outcomes-focused approach to program design and development. And this is so that we can continue to be focused and very intentional on our intended, the impacts that we want to have on our community and our participants. Last year, we were able to really hone in and articulate our program outcomes, which are health and wellness, developing a sense of place and community, and also leadership. And so this process is helping us to develop and design our programs to be intentional and to be aligned to those outcomes. So last year, we completed a strategic vision and mission for our recreation services unit. We also started a training for this. We also started training in backwards design. So this is the approach we're using for program planning. And then some tools were also developed for our staff. So this year we are in our second year of training in backwards design, and we have 2 tracks, one for our staff and one for one leadership track for our supervisors. For our staff, we are teaching them the process, how to use the tools, and this includes being clear about what our intended outcomes are. How do we know we're achieving what we set out to achieve, and then developing the activities to get there. And then we're also providing training to our leadership, our supervisors, so that they can coach and they can support their staff to be able to apply this process. We'll also be planning for our 3rd and final year of this training with our staff. And again, the intent is so that we can be very focused and intentional about our impact, the impacts that we want to have on our participants. Our third project is around program evaluation. We want to be data-driven. Our other presenters talked a lot about using data, right, to make decisions. And so this is something that we want to implement for our programs. So we want to come up with a program and monitoring evaluation plan that includes tools and systems. So again, we can use it to make decisions so that we can be committed to continuously improving and evolving the work that we do, adapting to our ever-changing context. And we want to be able to articulate the impact that we do have. Again, serving thousands of children and youth, and not to mention all the kupuna and the community organizations that we support. So this summer, we didn't bring on an evaluator yet, but we took a stab at developing our first survey So this was the first time DPR administered an island-wide survey for Summer Fun. And so we targeted our parents and participants, our junior leaders, and our temporary staff, our summer aides. And we're using that data both at an island-wide level as well as at park levels to celebrate the good stuff that we did, but also to address areas of improvement that we in preparation, so we're ready to implement in summer 2023. We are in the process of developing an RFP to contract someone who has this expertise to help us come up with our tools and our system. That RFP is currently with Corp Counsel and BFS, so we're pretty far along.
Thank you. Sorry, there's just two more. The fourth project that we have is staff training and development and education. And this is a very important piece for us to be able to continually invest in our staff will only help us to continue to do outstanding work in the communities and serve the families that we do. So this one is to invest in our staff and continue with their development and their training and increase the quality of our programs and services. Training includes the leadership, collaboration, youth engagement, and we put in trauma-informed care because we need our staff to be able to handle both the public as well as themselves. Yeah, we're trying to teach them about self-care as well. And this will be done through a lot of the training. We have completed staff surveys. We went out and talked to staff and we asked them to tell us, what do you need? What are we missing? How can we help you? Give you the tools and the skills that are needed for you to do the work that you're doing. Yeah. We reminded staff that this is a good opportunity for them to voice the things that they thought they didn't know coming into the job, but now that they know that they are, this is what they need. So we did a staff survey, did a needs assessment, and we are coming up with plans and using their data and input. So everybody's has bought in, or at least had a say to what they need. We did a mini conference in November, and thank you, Chair, for opening the activity. I hope it was as good for you as it was for us, so thank you. But on that day, it included training on evaluation, communication. It also talked about collaboration, and it also talked about planning, yeah? I mean, truly focusing in on, as we talk about desired outcomes and how to get there. So teaching process is something that is very focused on. So with that, we have come up with a training schedule, or at least figuring out how to fit it in. You know, as busy as everybody is, as you folks should know, this being like 6th hour of your day, just like us, we're coming up with a plan, we're coming up with a schedule of what's needed. So that's the fourth, sorry. And our last one is, it says on the slide, staff training and education, but it actually is modernizing DPR's program delivery model. And it talks about technology. So modernizing our program delivery model and program offerings by using technology. COVID taught us a lot. And during the shutdown, staff did innovative things to reach and still serve the public that we are committed to. So with that, we would like to continue to modernize and still reach the audiences that we did outside of being face-to-face. And now that we're opening up, that just gives us a whole different venue to be able to reach people. So we are getting Zoom licenses to be able to be outside of our brick and mortar buildings, to engage different audiences. We learned again through COVID that we reached audiences that were out of state, out of country. I mean, it was a very, very good eye-opening for staff to learn that we can reach people everywhere, right? And so we want to be able to continue that. And so we are in the process of now researching and pricing technology and ways for us to continue that, not that we're going to stop being face-to-face, because that's what we do, right? We are here for our participants, our families, and our communities. So we look forward to continuing to update you on all of the support that you folks have put into with our youth development. So thank you very much for your time. And Emily. Okay.
Hi, my name is Emily Perry, and I'm the Community Forester with the Parks Division of Urban Forestry. Thank you, Committee Chair, Committee Vice Chair, Council Chair, and Council members. I'm actually going to talk about two different projects. One of them is FRF funded, and it's the Community Forestry and Tree Equity Project, and the second one is congressionally directed money for tree inventory, which I'll get to later. So the project description for the Community Forestry Program is really focused on growing and maintaining our urban tree canopy. And when I say urban tree canopy, urban in the sense of where people work and live. So that's essentially island-wide, right? Just not the conservation areas. And we're gonna focus on doing this through outreach and education, workshops, and then tree giveaways. And those tree giveaways will be primarily focused on planting and private residences. So first, I wanted to address what is the need for this sort of programming. So if you look at the most recent tree canopy data, there's actually shown a decline in tree canopy across the island. And there also was a City Council resolution, 1855, to increase the tree canopy to 35% by 2035, demonstrating the Council's desire and interest in also increasing urban tree canopy across the island. There is precedence with history of Arbor Day tree distributions, and Councilmember Tupola and Cordero, we've had events in your districts in the past, and we hopefully will do events in the other districts as well. And so what we're really focusing on with this program is taking the there's this big push for Arbor Day, which is in November, but making this not just a day or a week or so, but making it a year-long program. And so this also is addressing the increasing temperatures through urban heat islands. As our island gets warmer, we want to increase the urban tree canopy, which will provide shade, evapotranspiration to cool the areas. So how are we addressing the need? So through this project, we're looking at doing an RFP. So we're working with Budget and Fiscal to create an RFP that will really focus on community organizations that are already out there doing the grassroots work of outreach and education about focused on environmental work. So we are designing the RFP to be catered towards communities who are already in these neighborhoods doing the work that we're focusing on, and they'll be conducting the workshops, they'll be conducting the tree distributions, and again, it's focused on matching trees to people's homes. So we're focusing on Native Hawaiian, Polynesian introduced trees, as well as fruit trees for sustenance. And so for the progress of this, we are hoping, we're working with BFS and we're very close to releasing the RFP. Within the next month or so, this will be out for organizations to apply to. And then hopefully throughout the process of procurement, we will be able to start the work in early summer of this year. And then the second project that I'm going to focus on is the city street and park tree inventory. And just a little background of how of what the goal is. It's to provide a comprehensive tree inventory and also obtain a software to manage our city and street trees that are maintained by the Division of Urban Forestry throughout the island. So as some of the council members may have gotten, there are a lot of concerns about city street trees and city park trees, which our division takes care of. The need for an inventory is important because right now we just have basically a list of the streets with the number of trees. So if you go down Kapiolani Boulevard, it says X amount of trees, of this kind of trees on this street. And so we're looking to modernize that system, as well as obtain a software to kind of put more history and work history and data into a comprehensive work management system instead of using different systems throughout paper and computer as we are now. So we're doing this with congressionally funded money from Congressman Case. The total amount is a $600,000 project with a 50-50 match from federal and city. And so we are in the process of composing an RFP with Budget and Fiscal Services to contract out the data collection portion, which, as I mentioned, we'll be able to have GPS points for each tree with history information about when it was last pruned, stuff like that, which will give us more information to provide for communities when they have concerns about specific trees. And then we're also using the funds to procure a management system to kind of just, as I said, modernize where we're at. And for their progress, thank you, Council. We got approval for the expenditure of limited purpose monies, as well as the transfer for the city match. And we are looking for the completion of the project to be done in June of 2024. So we have through calendar 2024, mid-2024 calendar year to complete the project. And I will then be passing it back to Jennifer, who will be talking about the rest of the FRF projects.
I just wanted to quickly go over the last three projects that are in the first tranche of our FRF funding. The first was Keep Hanauma Bay open to the public with safe and sanitary facilities. This project was to staff the bay at full operational levels by funding 11 civil service positions for 1 year. We've filled 7 of the positions and are continuing recruitment for the remaining 4 positions. The next project was maintenance of public health and safety in city parks. For this project, we hired 6 contract groundskeepers to maintain underserved parks for 1 year, and all of these positions have been filled. And the last project was the Cocoa Head Shooting Complex safety improvements, and this was berm and safety improvements. As you may be aware, the complex is currently closed. A fire range expert has conducted a preliminary site inspection of the complex, and the department will be moving forward with improvements based on their feedback. We expect to have more detailed updates on the status later this month. If you go to the next slide, I get over here. So we just talked about the first tranche of money. We got a second, as we call it, tranche of money, and that came from Bill 15, Appendix A, and these were council ads. And we were tasked with 6 projects at about $3.1 million. The first project was improvements to the pedestrian bridge over the Honolulu stream. MSS actually used operating funds to replace the grates and supports and repaint the entire bridge. So because we didn't use any of the FRF funds, DPR has had preliminary discussions with the Parks Chair, thank you, to potentially reprogram some of the funding toward the Cocoa Head Shooting Complex, as well as to fund an island-wide park equity study. The last department-wide plan was done over 18 years ago, so we're really excited about the opportunity to undertake this type of study to ensure equity in both DPR facilities and programming, and we'll definitely be sharing more with the committee as we progress on that project. The next project was establish a dog park at the Ho'aloha Neighborhood Park. MSS is finalizing the park design using operating funds, and we're awaiting our FRF fund allocation to begin work on that project. Next was establish a community garden at a park in CD7. We're looking forward to working with Councilmember Cordero on this project later in the year, and we're excited to build upon the work done by our Revitalizing Community Garden FRF project as we move forward with that. For the remaining 3 projects, these projects were beyond the scope of what DPR could do in-house, and DDC does not currently have the capacity to execute these as well. So we'll be working with the council members and administration on possibly reprogramming these funds for alternative projects. And finally, we want to quickly highlight the work of our amazing MSS staff. The council added almost $2.5 million to the MSS operating budget for these specific projects listed here. The first project, maintenance of canoe halaus and park improvements, Peter Yamashita was able to talk with all the council members to go over project ideas. Most of these projects are in the planning phase, so I need to note that they are subject to change depending on scope and costs. But we found that most of these projects are coming in over the $100,000 threshold, and so we're looking at possibly closer to about $2 million for those. And although we greatly appreciate the funding, this has been a lesson learned that these projects have taken away from other department responsibilities. So although we can do a lot, we need to manage expectations as far as what can realistically be done with our staff as we move forward. The next project was a dog park in Kaneohe, and MSS has finished most of their work back in December, and we're waiting on some electrical issues to finish that. The next project, roof repairs and more resurfacing of parking lots in CD3. And last but definitely not least, post and chain installation at Kea'au Beach Park. And we're in the procurement stage of that project and are looking to add additional gates as we move forward. So thank you very much.
So I want to thank the council members for all the support you folks have provided, not only in coming up with the ideas for the projects, but also working with our staff to refine the details of the projects, putting the funding in the budget. It's been a really wonderful collaboration with you. I know we just threw a lot of information at you, and we'd be happy to take any questions today. But as I mentioned before, we will be cycling the 5 main projects through. So you'll hear from each project every 3 months. And we can have a little bit more in-depth presentation because each month we'll be handling only 1 or 2 projects at a time. And then if you folks have questions, in between time, you can always reach out to us, send us information, and we'd be happy to incorporate that and respond. But as far as today goes, thank you for being such a wonderful audience. And if you have any questions for any of us, we'd be happy to take them.
Thank you, Director, and thank you, everyone, for a great presentation. I want to open it up for discussion. So, Councilmember Tupola.
Thanks so much, Chair. And thank you for having this. This was wonderful. And thanks for all the work you do with the department. Awesome. You guys can use him anytime you need. He's at your service.
We appreciate that.
So there's so much to say, but Director, thank you, because you guys have reached out on all of these small, minutia things that we have going on and really heard our ideas, suggestions, and implemented it. So I'll start off with Anna and Katie, and they don't need to come up, but I'm just going to, just say thank you for the update or proposed update on these community garden rules, because I think more people on the West Side would join the program, but I do believe the rules are a little bit too much for them to, and it's not because they're not a good guideline, but I'm hoping that it could maybe open up so that there's not as much stringency for people who already have a community garden going on in order for them to qualify. It's kind of a big thing on the West Side. We're like, oh, we don't have any community gardens. No, we do. They're just not approved city community gardens. So if we can bring that a little bit closer, I think that would be great, because there's a lot of people that want to participate. So that was exciting to see. My question was in regards to the youth programs first. So I know that you guys talk about Summer Fun because it's a program you guys run, but where does, say, for example, and I know I'm just generalizing because for me, youth use the park. I know adults do as well, but like say, for example, the archery range, because I have one in my district, right? So it's not like a program you run, but it is something very specific and it's kind of underutilized. So does that go under the evaluation part of this? And I'll say a couple more and then you can answer. I was also thinking about the YNI boxing because we have a specific area of the gym where boxing is. And I know it's not your program, but people pull permits to use it for boxing. Does that get evaluated? And we also have skate parks, right? So I know these are not programs, but where in your scope of Department of Parks and Recreation do the usages, or maybe like trying to talk about it? And you've said this to me from the beginning, if they're used more, they will get vandalized less. You know, there'll be less homeless problems because then there's always people around using it. When do areas like that are really specialty parts of parks get evaluated?
I think that's a really good point. So I think the park staff, to start with, has been very good at developing programs island-wide. Summer Fun is a very long-time program, and it's an excellent program. And there's a number of other programs throughout the park, Kupuna groups, other specific groups that are worked with, clubs, a lot of organizations that use our facilities. what is new about what we're using the FRF funds for is taking a look at the programs, starting with the youth development programs, because that's a high need, particularly in our Title I communities. How can we be more intentional as we run these programs to achieve certain outcomes that's a benefit to the youth, to their families, and to the communities? So part of that training is taking a look at backward design. We've run this program this way. We hadn't consciously thought about youth leadership development when we did it. How would we redesign that if that's an outcome we wanted? Once the staff is trained in those tools and trained in the tools for evaluation and starts to use it in that program that we all do, because only some areas run an archery program, only some areas run a boxing program, but everyone is working on the summer fun program. So we start to utilize those tools, become familiar with them. They can then turn and be applied to every other program across the park department. So it's something that we hope will start to expand and grow. But this 2 years is going to be really concentrating on the youth development programs. But I think as staff pick that up, they'll start to incorporate that in other programs they run. They're not going to wait until the end of the 2 years.
I hear what you're saying. So basically using that as a model for other areas, because, the archery range is only used once a week. And, they had suggested, as the parks reaching out to other schools to have them utilize it, or HPD so they can use it for training, so that we're constantly utilizing it to bring down the amount of vandalism and homelessness that we have up there. So I'm hoping that can be kind of folded in, like you said, because we think we have a lot of specialty areas, but as far as the evaluation and making sure that we're making it, like you said, outcomes based, like, oh yes, this is doing what it's intended to do, as opposed to it's kind of like a zombie land. So we want it to get better. The next question I had about was enforcement for your ranger program. So there's 2 HPD districts right now that have parks details, and maybe, Chief Logan might have changed it. They used to have a beach task force enforcement detail on the North Shore as well. So is the stance of the parks, because I see how number 1 is to work with HPD, but is the stance of the parks to, on those parks, maybe not go there? Because I know you guys have 5 rangers in a island-wide approach, and I'm sure Chair Waters will get at this question too, but how exactly would you be working with HPD in the areas where they have ATVs and they have a detail out there?
Yeah. So again, what we'll be doing over this 2 years is assessing, one, whether the city should put enforcement powers in the Department of Parks and Recreation. And I think we're all leaning towards the answer to that is yes. But then what enforcement powers would go to parks? What would the interaction be with HPD? So, for instance, some park departments across the nation, their park departments may have full police powers. They may carry guns. They may be just like a police officer, but they're a park ranger. In other jurisdictions, they go on the other end of the spectrum, and they'll say, we want someone there just to educate. And that's it. They don't have any enforcement powers. And then there's jurisdictions that will find some place in the middle. But as we're reaching out with other parks departments through the National Recreation and Park Association and starting to have conversations with them, there are some commonalities in all of those around training. Because even for the departments where they're just education and they don't necessarily have the enforcement authorities, they have found that walking into situations where they're telling people, you can't do that, are you aware of the rules? Sometimes those turn violent. So these people are equipped with radios that may be connected with the police departments so they can call for backup. They're trained in self-defense. They're trained in de-escalation tactics, and as I was mentioning, and sadly, they're trained in Narcan, providing Narcan for drug overdoses that they stumble across in various situations. So the assessment project is going to be evaluating the different options for the city and county, and then bringing forward a recommendation to the council, to the mayor, saying, given what's with a written report that has backup information so people can kind of question, why or what was the basis for these recommendations. How should we do enforcement at the parks level? What should the interaction be with the police department, with DoCare, with other administrative enforcement agencies. So our parks permits officer came from the state tax office. If we're going to be doing enforcement on commercial activities, the state tax office can get an awful lot of attention from a commercial activity. Either you're paying taxes or you're not, and that may open up a whole nother can of worms that can bring you into compliance. So they'll be doing that legwork over this couple years. The park ranger manager who did the presentation today, she was a Ho'okela intern at HPD last summer, and we snagged her. She just graduated with a graduate degree from Seattle, University of Seattle, got it right this time, in master's in criminal justice. And so she's already been reaching out and making contacts with some other fellow alum at HPD and working with the different enforcement. The 4 park rangers that she will be overseeing, and we're going into interviews this week with 2 applicants, will be going out and getting data in parks all around the islands. We're going to probably start concentrating with the beach parks because that's where a lot of the commercial activities take place, because that's where the tourism is and that's where the money is. But gathering data from each of the areas, but we'll follow up too on the HPD because I had heard they used to have park details, but I don't think they currently do. Yeah.
They have ATVs and they use it in some way at the park. So when we ask them for enforcement, they'll come out and do it. But yeah, just a thought. So basically your answer is to be determined.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. But I think we all want to have good information so we can make good decisions about what this enforcement would look like, what the powers should be, what the training would be, what the equipment would be, what the staffing would be, and what types of violations should they be concentrating on for the park people, and what would we want to leave in the kuleana of the police department.
Right. And I'm glad to hear about her degree and background because obviously there's a lot of equipment that HPD has that would be useful, like the ATVs to go down, up and down to do enforcement. And I hope that you guys will remain open to the idea of a 24/7 parks hotline. I know I bring it up a lot, but in Nanakuli, they really feel like we need one that's not about a 911 call because it's not always a criminal offense. And so I'm hoping that if there is this parks ranger, unit, that somehow there can be a way to contact them in the future as it develops so that people know this is the number you call when there is a parks issue and it's not necessarily criminally related, but it could be commercial activity or other things that they wanted to report. But thank you, Chair. Thank you, Director, for the time. And thank you to your whole department for coming here today and for this wonderful presentation. I'll turn the time over to my colleagues.
Awesome. Thank you, Councilmember Tupola. Councilmember Cordero, questions? Okay. Followed by Councilmember Okimoto. No question?
Okay. Thank you, Chair Tolba. Hi, Director, and thank you to the whole DPR team. I really appreciate it. There was a lot of information, so I'm trying to gather what exactly I want to talk about first, but I guess I just want to express gratitude because, even the allocation per council district, I do want to thank Peter and also Nate for communicating with me because I already used up a lot of that funding for our lights. And I know that when we talk about things such as whether it be paving or lights, things like that, it sounds minute or minutia. I don't know what word that was. That was a good word, Councilmember Tupola, but it seems that way, but it really affects so many people, whether the lights affect the park directly, but also the surrounding neighborhoods and how people feel living and just traversing and just being around a certain park. So thank you very much. And also for the future work to come. But first I want to bring up the data and the software that is really going to tell the story for all the parts, all the divisions within DPR. And I was wondering currently to determine what the needs are now, what the hotspots are for all the things that you need to know. What is the current practice that you use and current softwares, since that will be the focus for the next year, 2 years with this money?
Well, I think the technology piece for the Recreation Youth Development Program was dealing with what came out of COVID. And so people were kind of using the laptops that they may have in the office, or they were dragging the entire desktops out into a gymnasium with a lot of extension cords. When I was going around, I remember coming across like somebody doing an ukulele class. So one recreation guy's doing an ukulele class, the other recreation person's filming them, and kind of monitoring it, and the kids are at home trying to do this. A lot of them were just doing ad hoc on the phone with Kapuna because they couldn't come out to the senior clubs, but they didn't know how to use technology. So they were giving them over-the-phone lessons on how to utilize things and maybe, start to be able to communicate and gather a little more through Zoom and WebEx. What the program wants to do now is to actually make that part of our programs. Instead of being something ad hoc they're trying to cobble together with duct tape, what's the equipment that we need if we want to run a hybrid program? We have some kapuna that may go through, my mom recently broke her leg, so she's not able to get out, and she wants to participate in things. So, what happens with a kapuna with that, where they then become isolated and they can't participate in the club, if we can make those clubs hybrid, if we can make events, something that helps keep people socially engaged, mentally, physically, in better shape. So that's the type of technology they're exploring for the programs. We also work with the Department of Information Technology. They've done things like Hanama Bay, being able to have people do reservations online. They're upgrading our camping permits now, and we're working with them on taking other permits online as well so that we can be more efficient and rapid with working with the public. And I see that expanding over time because they've built that PROS system, and we're able to just add on to it now, piece by piece.
And Director, what about the data that you plan to focus on collecting for all the different divisions in your department? What has Parks been utilizing currently? What type of software?
We don't have a particular software program. That was one thing we explored in the FRF proposals. And I think you raise a good point because they are going to be gathering information through surveys and data. One of the things we did early on is we pulled together all the different sections within the department that are working on these FRF projects and said, we think it would make sense if we worked as a team, because we all have to go through procurement. We all have to go through hiring. So even though the content or substance of each project is different, the procedures we go through are similar. And we'll throw this one in on, how can we bring this data into a common database, at least for now. And if we have to work with DIT on developing something that's more than just Excel or Google or whatever, we can. But we do have abilities within our department to use Google and to use other formats for gathering information.
Right, and because I also want to recognize that it's not just for volunteer management, which I'm super excited about, but also for surveying, existing users of community gardens and different programs and such. And then, and the reason why I asked that is because I remember in the beginning of 2021, Councilmember Tupola and I would bring up certain gaps in community gardens, which is why, we still talk about it to this day, and where we could maybe add to such data, such software or such data to be able to, after we focus on our current programs and current gardens or current, just programs, and then start adding new ones where there are pukas and gaps on our island.
Okay. Deputy Director Pu'u has more information than I do on data, so let me have her add that.
So I just wanted to share, we're actually using SurveyMonkey to do our surveys. For the Summer Fund survey, though, I want to share we used Google Forms, and it was very painful collecting and aggregating and analyzing the data. So we've moved into SurveyMonkey. So I believe all of our teams have purchased that to utilize. And in speaking with a colleague who's an evaluator, she also suggested to use that because it's really great, though. We can break the data down, we can group it, it gives us graphs and stuff. So, that's what we're using. Sorry, just want to share that. Yeah.
Thank you. That's good. And also, I do want to mention about the senior clubs that you would have at certain at different parks. I know that also continued, and I know that with certain facilities being shut down, like rec areas, that you were able to accommodate other senior clubs at nearby parks. So that was really great. And I know that is something that my office hears about a lot, mainly because I also used to like going to those senior clubs as well. So they are very popular in my district. With that, I also wanted to ask about when I think Emily brought up, Ms. Perry brought up the heat map island index. Sorry, totally butchered that. Heat map data. I was wondering if you've already incorporated that into where the focus for a tree canopy, more than just the, what do you call it, the distribution of trees, but also further tree programs. I don't know how to describe it, but, and what the timeline would be to, start, heavily prioritizing those areas that are in the red. I think they're just deep orange, I would say, on that map.
I can have Emily come up and answer.
Hi, Councilmember Quadera. Thanks for the question. Yes, so for this project, it's a pilot project, and we use the urban heat island data and social vulnerability index data through the Office of Climate Change, Sustainability, and Resiliency. And we are focusing for the pilot from Eva to up the Waianae coast. And so that's going to be for the 2 years that we're running it. And then hopefully after, we'll be able to identify additional funding for future expansion to different council districts island-wide.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think that's all for me, Councilmember Toba, or Chair Toba.
Thank you, Councilmember Cordero. Okay, Councilmember Okimoto, followed by Chair Waters.
Thank you, Chair. This is not a question. I just want to, first of all, thank you, Director Thielen, and your team for being here. This is my first committee with you, so I'm looking forward to meeting with you. I already have contacted your office on some issues in my community, but just want to let you know my team and I will be contacting you. I want to thank you for the very well-organized and well-presented presentation that you gave to us. Thank you for informing us. I'm looking forward to meeting with you and working with you guys. Mahalo.
Thank you, Councilmember Okimoto. Chair Waters.
Mahalo, Chair.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, thank you as well. I am sorry I came in a little late. I missed half of your briefing, but this was a really good slideshow. I do have a question for you. Are all the people in the room from Department of Parks and Recreation here? Yeah.
We may have some folks in the back that are not from our department, but the vast majority of people in 1, 2, 3, the 4 rows are all DPR.
That's awesome. So, and thank you for bringing everybody. And I just want to thank all of you for all the hard work that you do. You know, I talked to Chair Tolba about this upcoming budget session. And as you may have heard in my inauguration speech, I said, what you folks do in the Parks Department and the parks that we have in Hawaii and on our island are so important to people. You know, it's where people go for refuge, really. You know, we all have hard lives. And on the weekends, we go to our parks and we want a safe, clean place where we can recreate. You know, our kids play sports there. Our kupuna, even playing pickleball. You know, every day these parks are really, really well used. So to the extent that we can work together during the budget session to figure out what else do you folks need. You know, one of the things that one of the presenters said that, and I thank you guys, that was so nice to actually, a department actually reached out to us and said, you know, you have $100,000, what do you want to do? And then you guys did it. So thank you. But to the extent that we can help you with the budget, what else do you need? I noticed, I was just texting my staff, how much vacancies you guys have? You have 209 from last year, 209. So how can we help you to fill those vacancies? I know it's a DHERD problem, but you could do so much more if you had these positions filled, right? And I see my guys in my district wearing the blue shirts, and I try to make a point to thank them for the hard work, and they're out there working hard. They are, with the limited resources that you have. But, you know, one of the things that, I know this was just on ARPA, but to the extent that we can help, because it's, you know, in some of the bathrooms, it's not just in my district, it's probably all over the place. The bathrooms are in many parks. I could see the staff just using whatever they can just to keep it running. But to the extent we can put money in the budget for stuff like that, or increase your budget for stuff like that. Trash cans, sometimes there's people burning trash cans for a while. I don't know why they would do that. That's a horrible thing. And then they'd sometimes get replaced, sometimes they wouldn't. Canoe halaus, you know, that's a canoe paddler. You know, that's something that's super important. Surf racks. You know, I don't know if, did you pass number 2? Right on, thank you. But surf racks in Waikiki and other places, surfing, canoe paddling, ocean sports, right? It just brings so much joy to so many people. You should see on any given Sunday at a canoe regatta, right? We got 2 Okra and Huiva just on this island, but every island has this. So to the extent that we could support those folks. Enforcement, I know that's a huge problem. And thank you for considering park rangers. But police are asked to do so much if we can help them out. And what you just said today was so helpful, that it runs the gamut from police authority to education. And I didn't think about education. I thought, wow, what you're saying, wow, what a great idea. But sometimes that can escalate. And that's a real issue, because we don't want to put the parks people in harm's way. But at the same time, by the way, I looked at you guys' rules. It's voluminous. If you need just positions to go through your rules and rewrite them, if that's helpful, that's something we can look at. The other thing I just did want to ask, there is a question here. You know, design and construction, there's a Department of Design and Construction, obviously. And they tell us that they're overworked and they don't have time to do all the projects that even the mayor want to do, let alone the city project, council project. So would it be helpful if we gave you guys your own design and construction department within Parks and Recreation? It used to be like that. Every department had their own design and construction. And it might be more efficient if you had your own. We've got to talk to the mayor about that, of course, but is that something you guys would be open to?
So first of all, thank you, Chair, for recognizing the value and importance of what the park staff does and the places for the parks and the botanical gardens. It's really meaningful to hear that from all of you folks and greatly appreciated. I have a little bit of good news before getting to your question. In addition to the group behind me, we had a lot of people working really hard throughout the department on the hiring. So between September and now, we have hired 96 positions.
Wow, that's awesome.
Now, we do have retirements and some separations, so we don't necessarily have a net increase of 90, but we're cranking and we're continuing to crank. So we really appreciate the council letting the departments retain the, I always get it, PVP, whatever it is, so that we can continue to hire, because that really makes a huge difference. As far as the DDC design and construction, I think one of the things that we've also been working on that's allowed us to go forward with those $100,000 improvements and the dog parks and the other things is MSS has spent the last year working with BFS purchasing, and we've put out master agreements, and we made sure to federalize them. So this is kind of tackling the gap in between DDC, which is requiring permitting and planning and design and all that stuff, and what our staff can do. There's a huge middle ground that would fall under repair and maintenance. It wouldn't necessarily trigger a building permit. It doesn't require, a design or an engineer, but it's beyond the scope of what we can do, either because of the scale, we're just doing so many at one time, or maybe it's specialized, like it comes to a gym roof, and we don't have the people that we can send up 2 stories high. We don't have the equipment and things like that. But MSS, and many thanks to Peter Yamashita, who is our manager of the year, has put together master agreements on roofing, on painting. We're finalizing, I think, the concrete Yeah, and so there's a host of them. He's got about 7 of them in place. And that's going to allow us to tackle a lot more. And I'm delighted to hear that you guys want to support our budget because we are working with the administration to bring forward some initiatives for your consideration. And we look forward to presenting them to you in the budget presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I do have questions, and thank you guys so much. Great presentation. For the Adopt a Park program, how many organizations, because I know there's a lot of people and probably in your district that want to help and want to adopt parks. How many active or signed up? You know, offhand?
So we think right now there are 60 Adopt a Park active organizations. We may have some that are not yet fully active. In addition to parks, we have a tremendous amount of volunteer activities going on in our botanical gardens. So our public information officer, Nate Sirota, is gathering all that data and is going to be putting out some information, and we can share that with you. We are still working on the Adopt a Park for the undeveloped parklands because there are just more assumption of risk and liability concerns. So we're still working through some of that with CORE. But we have about 60 active in the regular parks.
Okay. And then for the park ranger program, how will you determine which park or the park rangers will be stationed?
Okay. Thank you, Chair. With 4 rangers out in the field and 1 manager, we're not going to be have the luxury of stationing any ranger in one specific park over time. As you mentioned, we're going to be focusing on the unauthorized commercial activities that are taking place. That tends to concentrate in beach parks because most of these businesses are selling services to tourists. And so we would be sending people out, probably in pairs for their own safety, to be going out and doing observation and data gathering in different parks around the island. And so we would probably try to be efficient and work that out on a geographic basis so we don't have people spending a lot of time in the car and instead can do some deep dives in areas. But then we'd want to go back over time and over seasons to verify whether what they saw one day is kind of common or something unusual.
Awesome. I got 2 more questions. Have any of the council ads been completed? You know, I know mine's is coming.
Yours is coming. They're all on the cusp of being put out to bid.
Okay, so.
Contract. A lot of them, and this one is almost ready to go.
Awesome.
They're all almost ready to go.
Okay.
So we were finalizing the master agreements, as we mentioned before, but even under the master agreements, we have to get bids because we'll have multiple vendors under the agreements and then move them forward. So there's a lot of paperwork that MSS is doing, but on the cusp.
Yeah. And my last question is, I have a lot of constituents that love the shooting range. So is there a timeline we can expect the shooting complex to reopen?
We're working on the timeline. Our public information officer will be putting information out, but he and I were talking just now about it, so I'll give you guys a preview. We did have the range expert that we procured through emergency procurement come out and take a look at the range. He did a 2-day inspection, met with our staff and HPD staff on site, has identified some physical improvements and then some what he calls administrative improvements. So we're starting to work on some of those administrative improvements, things like the signage, the procedures, setting up the equipment and the materials, and then we're working on the larger physical, on being able to finalize the staging of those. We're coordinating with HPD, and then we've also scheduled for the second part of the contract is going to be the trainer coming out to train both our staff and HPD staff on the OSHA requirements for managing the range. So that will happen in mid-February at this point is what it's scheduled for. So barring any changes in his schedule, we should go forward with that. So we're making progress, but I don't have timetables to give you at this point.
Okay. Thank you, Director. Councilmember Tupola.
Two quick ones.
Go for it.
I have a list of 33 parks in my district and who was the last adopt a park person. Do you think that if I send it over, you guys could just update me on if these are still being adopted? I don't know how long a adopt the park lasts because some of them are older and we had it listed as such and such a group is doing it. I don't know if they've checked out and we need to get new people in, but is that something maybe you or Katie could help me with?
Yeah, why don't you send over a riser, and Councilwoman, you'll understand, like, these are ones that we can track over time. So if you don't get an answer back, your staff can say, what about riser number? And then we can track down where it is.
Okay.
But send that to us. I think we did do something over the last year where we went through the old adopt-a-park agreements because they didn't have an expiration date.
Yes.
And I think we kind of whittled out before CJ's retirement which ones were inactive, but we'll double check on that. And I think the new agreements, do they have an expiration? They're 2 years. So if a group just kind of goes AWOL and disappears, it will naturally expire, and then we'll be able to move on.
And the second question I had was in regards to Honu. As you guys talk through enforcement, because now the city is over Honu, obviously they're putting it in parks. And so I wanted to see how this is helping or not helping with enforcement, because it does kind of leave a footprint after they leave. And I think it'd be good for us to discuss if Honu is helpful or not helpful for our parks and kind of how we see it moving forward, especially as we do this ranger program.
Yeah, I think the most telling information to me, Councilwoman, is the fact that the communities that have hosted Honu are asking for it to come back. So I think especially outside of urban Honolulu, they just see more presence there, and that's had some help on deterring negative behavior in the area.
I think so, but I would say in my community, because it's not anything permanent, it kind of comes and goes. People kind of are looking for more permanent solutions to enforcement. So now that there is a ranger program, how do we transition it so people feel that way? That now the presence is added, so now I'm not as worried to go to the park, which they were using Honu, I feel like, as kind of a Band-Aid. Like, okay, well, we're going to come and we're going to do enforcement. Okay, well, for 3 months. And then after that, it's going to rise again. So just as part of the dialogue when you guys move forward with your ranger program. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any more question? Thank you so much. And I echo Council Chair Waters, what he said about the importance of parks. And I know everyone sitting here feels the same, and we want to do whatever we can to make sure that our parks are clean, safe, and is usable for everyone. So thank you guys so much for your presentation. This brings us to the end of our agenda. Mahalo everyone for your participation today. There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned.